Hello everyone, we're back here in the workshop at the Revs Institute, and we've had a bit of a hiatus on the progress on our Elva Porsche due to the hurricane and us being at the Velocity Speed Festival. But now I've had some time, I'm back on working on this car. Now what we're going to do, I think I mentioned some of the videos that we tend to send a lot of our suspension and steering components out for crack testing. So I'm going to show you kind of what it takes to disassemble this whole hub assembly. So on the back here we have our dust cap, and it has this screw that it actually works as a tool. So I'm going to get a flat blade screwdriver, and I'm going to remove this screw that's threaded in here. And it has a nut, and that actual nut is not meant to unthread this cap. This cap is actually a bit pressed in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread a 1030 screw in here with a washer. And I'm actually going to use a puller to pull that dust cap from the upright assembly. So this is a pull that I have, has that adapter on the end. I'm going to grab it with the washer, and it takes a very gentle pull, and you can see it slide out, and then that brings the dust cap out and exposes our nut. Now I've already had this apart. I removed the cotter pin, so usually there's a cotter pin in there. Now in my notes I've already written down where I have spacers, where I have washers. So upon assembly, I know exactly the order in which this is supposed to go on. So next, I'm gonna just remove this front hub bolt, which I've already loosened, so it's finger tight. I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. This is also cotter pin, which I've removed the cotter pin from. And with the washer, I'm gonna put this in the order in which it's coming apart. So now if we go back to this side, on the back side, this is the nut that captures the inner bearing. So, and this usually is not very tight. I should be able to slide this out and get the washer. We'll grab the inner bearing. Now, if you come back and look into here, I'm going to pull kind of the spindle out, and that brings the whole hub with the rotor off. So now if we look in here, if you want to come around this side, you'll see that there's the outer bearing with a grease seal. So to pull the seal apart, we actually have this seal tool. And what I'm going to do is, because this is a original fragile part, I'm going to put this just so I don't damage the housing. I'm going to make sure I grab the seal and then carefully pull it out, and then that brings and pops the seal out. Now once we're in here, we have the inner bearing. Now I have to remove the the outer and inner race, but before that I'm going to remove this steering arm. Now this vise that we have here, we actually fabricated and made these aluminum inserts, so now it's clamping on this. The aluminum is softer than this material, so it prevents from any of these parts from getting damaged. So now I have these two bolts here to remove the steering arm. Next I'll remove these two nuts here. So the nut here is actually will be the first one that I remove, because the steering arm is actually threaded. So I would have to first remove this bolt from here. I'm going to place that here. And as you can see, I'm putting the ratchet on the nut. You always want to twist the nut and not the actual bolt. So I'm going to hold that down. That comes off like so. So there's the nut, there's a washer, and that allows me to bring this steering arm out. Now for the facility that does all of our crack testing, anything that's painted, I'm going to have to remove. So I'll take this in the sandblaster, blast all the paint away. That way they can do their inspection. I'm going to put that with this. So now that I have the upright completely apart, something that you can see here, I don't know how you can focus, but you'll see that there's slots in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the punch, set in here, and I'm actually going to tap it out. And they're 90 degrees apart. There's another one on the other side, and 90 degrees opposed to that one, or I'm sorry, 180 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and set it on here. I'm going to take the punch, grab our hammer. So you can kind of hear it. It's at the edge there. So now I should be able to pull it out. And that is our inner race. So this piece is almost removed. Now I am going to have to tap it just a little bit raised to get that last bit off. There we go. So now I have the outer race removed. The hub is completely free of any races, bearings, any type of insert. I'll leave those in there. Next, I'll take you guys into what we call the grinding room. I'll sandblast this, get it free of any paint, and then we'll remove the wheel studs off of the hub. So here's our steering arm. It's sandblasted. Next, I'll grab our rotor and hub assembly. Put my aluminum inserts here. I'll put this just for extra care. You have to remove this hub assembly from the rotor. So in the back here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nuts that I have to remove. We usually used hand tools because of how fragile and original some of the things are, some of the components are throughout the collection. We tend not to use any air power tools because you lose the feel, you know, if something's stripping or if something's binding up. It takes a little bit, but as they say, you can't rush perfection if you're working on these type of vehicles. No, I'm getting poetic. The rotor, what I'll do is once upon assembly, or I actually did it upon disassembly, and I'll do it one more time upon assembly and make sure there was nothing abnormal happening when I assemble everything. We'll check for lateral runout, so I'll actually put a dial indicator, rotate the rotor on the suspension as it would be on the, you know, assembled, and then that allows me to check for rotor runout, and then that will tell me if the rotor's bent. If the rotor's cracked, you can actually see that stuff visually, and what we do is we'll change those items out every certain amount of time. I'll take the rotor off, I'll label this and put it back on our shelf until we're ready to reassemble. So now I have the hub. So the hub, what I need to do is carefully try to grab it here, because what I need to do now is remove the studs off of the hub assembly. Now what we have is these stud extractors. You can see they have 3 rollers in there that as you twist it, it's going to clamp onto the stud and tighten it and remove it. What's really nice about that is since it's round, it won't damage or scaff or make any type of mark on the stud itself. You can see it's a flat machine surface. So I'm going to insert it on here, and as you thread it, it'll grab the stud. So now we'll have this on here, and you can see it grabbing the stud, and then that broke loose. So that completely allows me to remove the stud from the hub. Like I said, what's nice about this, it doesn't leave any marks on the stud on the machine surface. So it's a really nice tool to have for removing studs. Okay, so I have our hub here completely disassembled without the studs, dismounted from the upright. Now what I'm going to do is when I send all of these 3 parts is we'll send it together with the rest of the suspension parts from the rear. If we have another car, we'll probably send some of the components from another car. So to keep everything organized, what we do is a little trick is, this is from a hole puncher from somebody that cut a 3/4 inch hole. And I'm going to label it. This is the right front, and then I just take some safety wire. So I'm going to take the safety wire and just go around one of the holes on the upright. So now I'll do that with every component that we're going to send out. Next, I'll give this, I'll hand it over to our shipping department, ship it to the crack testing facility. They'll tell us if they find any abnormalities with any of the components. They'll ship it back to us, and upon arrival, we'll inspect it and we'll properly begin to assemble everything in the same exact way that I took it apart. And we'll keep you guys updated on the next status update on this.